I never thought the truth could be so dangerous. That night, as shadows invaded my apartment and every second turned into a fight for my life, I realized that some stories don't want to be revealed. But I couldn't back down. That photo, always face down, held secrets that threatened to destroy everything. My family, my safety, even my own sanity. And as the storm approached, I knew there was only one way out. To face the past no matter the cost. If you think you're ready to find out what really happened, follow my story. Because in the end, the truth isn't just a burden to carry. It's the only thing that can set us free. Since I was little, I always knew there was something wrong with that photo. On the living room shelf, among the smiling framed pictures from my baptism and my mother's graduation memories, there was a frame turned face down. No one touched it. No one spoke about it. It seemed to be there only to remind that certain truths shouldn't be touched. I remember asking for the first time when I was 7. My mother was dusting the shelf, duster in hand, and I watched her carefully turn the frame face down after wiping the dust. "Why is this photo turned over, Mom?" She hesitated for a second. A long enough second for me to realize that the question hurt her. "It's an old photo, daughter. It's damaged. It doesn't look nice face up." It was a lie. I could feel it. But like any obedient child, I swallowed the answer and kept pretending it didn't bother me. Even though at night I dreamed of the hidden image silently watching me. Over the years, I learned to live with that little secret of glass and wood. When my friends came over, I avoided letting them near the shelf. I didn't want them to ask because I didn't know how to answer. And my mother, she just shut down. It was as if everything in that house had its own story. Except that photo. Until many years later, the truth began to unearth itself. Not by choice, but by absence. My mother died on a Tuesday. And that's how it all started. The phone call came at 6:10 in the morning. I was still in bed, wrapped in a blanket that barely covered the emptiness adult life had brought. Work was hard, my relationship had ended weeks before, and I felt suspended in the air. Groundless, untethered. When I heard my mother's neighbor's voice on the other end of the line, I felt the world go silent for a few seconds. He stammered, lost, trying to tell me what he himself didn't understand. An ambulance. A worried neighbor. A body fallen in the bathroom. My mother. Alone. On the way to the hospital, I remember seeing the city lights passing by the car window as meaningless blurs. And a single image repeating in my head. The frame turned face down. It was as if that photo knew. The wake was small. Some old colleagues from work, 2 close neighbors, a distant cousin who appeared to say words that sounded too mechanical to be true. No one mentioned my father. No one even asked about him. He had disappeared before I had any memory, an absent shadow my mother never bothered to explain. While hearing whispers and pitying looks, all I could think was, why do I feel like I never really knew her? She was a present mother, yes. Hardworking, protective, sometimes stern. But there was always a wall between us. An invisible barrier made of chosen silences. I never knew where she came from, what she dreamed of, or who she was before me. And maybe the secret was in that photo. After the funeral, I returned alone to the house where I grew up. I opened the door with the key I still kept on my keychain, as if a part of me always knew this moment would come. The wood creaked beneath my feet. The scent of eucalyptus and detergent still lingered in the air, as if she had just stepped out for a moment. But it was only an illusion. I walked to the living room, and there was the shelf. The memories arranged in almost chronological order, like a carefully set altar of life. My baptism. My first baby tooth. My 15th birthday party. My mother smiling beside me always. And in the middle of it all, the frame turned face down. I approached slowly. My heart was pounding. Not out of fear, but foreboding. I took the frame with both hands. It was light, dusty, warm, as if it had a soul. I turned it over. And froze. It was an old photo, yes. And a bit faded. But perfectly visible. My mother, about 20-something years old. Darker hair loose over her shoulders. A simple floral dress. And beside her, a man I didn't know. Dark-skinned, calm look. He had an arm around her. And between them, a child. A boy. Must have been 2 years old. And the most frightening, he looked like me when I was little. On the back of the photo, scribbled with a pen, was a name, Lucas. And a date, 1992. I was born in 1995. The child in the photo wasn't me. My knees buckled. I sat on the couch and stayed there for hours, staring at that image as if facing a ghost. My world, already shaken by death, was beginning to collapse even deeper. Who was that boy? And why had his memory been hidden all my life? The house seemed to breathe differently now. Without my mother, the silence was thicker, almost tangible. Every door I opened creaked louder. Every empty room seemed to hold memories I never lived, or that had been torn away from me before they could belong to me. I spent the first night in my old bedroom. The mattress was still the same from my teenage years. The floral bedspread, the school books on the shelf, a diary I never finished. Everything was there, frozen in time. But I was no longer the same. The next morning, I gathered courage to return to the shelf. The photo was now on the table. I left it there on purpose. I wanted it to look at me, to force me to face it. Lucas. The name sounded strange in my thoughts, familiar and distant at the same time. I spent the morning rummaging through whatever I could. Drawers, cabinets, boxes. My mother was too organized, almost too much. Almost as if she had cleaned the traces of her own life with the care of a secret agent. Nothing about him. No album. No letter. No memory. But something inside me said the house hid more than it let on. That's when I decided to climb to the attic. The small retractable ladder in the hallway was rusty, and it took me a few minutes to unfold it. The attic smelled of mold and time. There were stacked boxes, bags with old clothes, Christmas decorations. And in the corner, half hidden under a light blue blanket, a cardboard box caught my attention. It was marked with pen, baby stuff. My heart raced. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was an old baby bottle, a pair of white little shoes, a blanket embroidered with the name Lucas in blue. And at the bottom, a hospital ID bracelet. Helena Dwar, born April 2, 1995. Lucas Dwar, born June 12, 1992. 2 children. One of them, erased from the story. I came down from the attic carrying the box as if it were a reliquary. My fingers barely held it, not because of the weight but because of its meaning. I sat on the living room floor. I spread the objects before me like pieces of an emotional puzzle someone tried to hide. The bracelet. The blanket. A teddy bear with a torn belly. And a small birthday card. Happy 2nd birthday, my love. You are the light that makes me get up every day. Mommy loves you. June 12, 94. I cried. I cried like someone losing someone they never knew. Like someone finding a part of their soul in another existence. Lucas had existed. He had a name. Clothes. A life. Love. But he was banished from everything. From the house. From the stories. From my memory. That night I couldn't sleep. I paced back and forth, holding the bracelet between my fingers as if it could answer me. But the only voice I heard was silence. The same silence my mother kept for almost 30 years. I decided to do what I should have done before. I grabbed my phone. I searched. Lucas Dwar, death. 1994, Rio de Janeiro. Took time, but I found something. An old police report, digitized as a PDF with blurred letters. 2-year-old child found lifeless at a residence in the northern zone. Cause of death, accidental drowning. My stomach twisted. Drowning. Alone. At home. The report said the mother had gone out for a few minutes. That she found the boy already unconscious, fallen inside the small inflatable pool in the backyard. It wasn't just grief. It was guilt. My mother lost her son, and blamed herself until her last day. And then I understood. The photo turned face down was her way of saying, I failed. I don't deserve to remember. But she remembered. Every day. At the back of the house, the backyard remained almost the same as I remembered from childhood. The neglected garden, the old hose, the old iron bench. But there was a patch of dry earth in the left corner, where once stood a small inflatable pool, the kind you set up in summer and take down in autumn. My mother never let anyone put another one there. Not even when I asked many times at 6, 7, 8 years old. She made excuses, said it was dangerous, that it was too much work. Now I knew the truth. That's where he went. Lucas died there while my mother was perhaps doing laundry, or going to the market, or crying alone in her room. I will never know. I sat on the iron bench and let the tears come again. It was as if the wind was blowing memories that weren't mine, but that pierced me all the same. I closed my eyes, and for a moment I swear I heard children's laughter, faint like echoes, as if time was trying to tell me what it saw. That night I took paper and pen. I wrote a letter to Lucas for the first time. I never met you, but I feel you. You lived. And I will never let them erase that again. I folded the letter, buried it beneath the mango tree, and left a white flower there. As a promise. Lucas, I see you now. At the bottom of the box where I found the baby items, there was an old note folded several times with steady handwriting. For emergencies, Mrs. Marinalva, 21, 99,845-77. The rest was smudged. But it was enough to start the search. It took an entire afternoon to track the right number. I called 3 times and no one answered. On the 4th, a hoarse, slow voice answered. Hello, Mrs. Marinalva? This is Helena Duarte, Sandra's daughter. You took care of my brother, Lucas. Silence. A silence that seemed like an abyss. And then, my God, you've grown up. We met 2 days later. She lived in a small apartment in Bangu. The woman who opened the door had eyes worn by time, but a look that still carried youth somewhere in her chest. She hugged me like someone reuniting with a ghost. Your mother. She protected you. Protected you too much. We sat down. She offered me coffee, but I only wanted answers. Lucas. He really existed, didn't he? He did. And he was the sweetest baby I ever knew. She told me she cared for him for almost 2 years. That she went to the house every day while my mother worked as a receptionist at a clinic. She said Lucas was smiling, calm. But there was something in my mother's sadness that always drew attention. She was a good mother, but always scared. Afraid of everything. She barely let the boy go outside. And then the fateful day. The pool was there. It was new. The boy loved water. But that day, she sent me home earlier. Said she didn't need me. That she would stay home. Marinalva looked out the window like someone searching for a point in the past. I found out hours later. I wanted to come back. To go to the funeral. But she disappeared with everything. Cut me off. Never wanted to talk again. And my father? She sighed deeply. Ah, daughter. That's another dark hole. I returned home with a heart on fire. The figure of my father was always a hole. My mother just said, he's not worth talking about. I grew up thinking he abandoned us. But now, everything seemed part of a carefully constructed narrative to hide something deeper. I was digging through old photos that I found a clue. On one of them there was a dedication on the back. To my eternal friend with love, Clara. Clara. Slowly I remembered. Clara was a very close friend of my mother. My baptism godmother, if memory serves. Then, she disappeared. Like everything else. I searched social media, public records, landlines. Nothing. Until I found an address in the countryside where someone with the same name lived. Retired, according to postal records. I went there the next day. The road was long. The landscape silent. And when I knocked on the door of the small white house with flowers in the garden, a short-haired lady looked at me as if she had seen a ghost. Are you Sandra's daughter? Yes. She paled. We sat in the backyard in the shade of a guava tree. I thought I'd never see anyone from your family again, Helena. After everything. After what? She hesitated. After Lucas. Silence. He was your godson, right? She nodded. Her eyes filled with tears. I baptized him. Gave him the blue blanket. I was there the day he was born. But, your mother took me out of her life after the tragedy. Said she wanted to forget. That no one could mention his name anymore. It hurt me so much, so much. She told me she tried several times to re-establish contact. Letters. Calls. But everything was ignored. And then in a low voice she told me. Your father was married to another woman when he met your mother. She got pregnant. He promised he'd leave everything. But he never did. When Lucas was born he came secretly. When you were born, he disappeared. My world spun. Clara took my hand. It wasn't her fault. She was just a young girl in love who believed too much. And then she handed me an envelope. This was with her. I asked her to keep it in case one day you came looking for me. Inside the envelope, a diary. My mother's diary. Before I went home, Clara insisted on taking me to the small village church. Sandra used to come here sometimes. Disguised. Sat in the back. Just cried. Talked to a lady. Mrs. Orea. She's still alive. She's in her 80s. Wants to talk to you. Orea welcomed me in the sacristy. Fragile, but with a firmness in her gaze that unsettled me. I remember your mother. She didn't talk much. Just listened. She cried. She said God had taken what she loved most and left only half. Half. You. My throat tightened. She said she didn't know how to love you without remembering him. And because of that, she loved you in silence. My eyes filled with tears. That was it. It was always that. The veiled affection. The care that never turned into words. Before I left, Aurea held my hand. She couldn't forgive herself. But she really wanted you to forgive her. And that's when I understood. Maybe the whole story wasn't about a secret but about guilt. About someone who lost so much that she couldn't love out loud anymore. And because of that she left clues. Small clues so that one day I would find everything she was incapable of saying. I went home with the envelope in my lap as if carrying a still beating heart. My mother's diary was small with a worn brown cover, edges eaten away by time. It smelled like something kept away, dry pain, words that never wanted to be read. For a while I just stared at it, sitting in her old armchair. The same room where for years she slept with her ghosts. Where she kept under the pillow memories she refused to let die. I opened it to the first page. The handwriting was firm, leaning forward as if each sentence was written urgently. June 12, 1992. He was born. My boy. My little son. Lucas. I never imagined something so small could fill such a big space. But at the same time, fear. Fear was born with me that day too. The following words weren't linear. They jumped between joy and guilt, promises and failures. On each page was a mother trying to be whole in a world that only wanted her half. My mother wasn't cold, she was exhaustingly human. Broken by choices, drowned by abandonment and lack of support. She wrote to herself like someone writing to not disappear. He smiles and I feel I don't deserve that smile. Because his father isn't here. Because I lied to my parents, to friends, to myself. Because Lucas was born from love, but also from illusion. Reading that was like invading a secret world. For the first time my mother spoke to me without filters. And even absent, she was more present than she ever was in life. With every word I crumbled a little more. With every line I understood better the cracks that shaped me. June 12, 1994. The title of the next diary chapter seemed to burn on the page. The same date as Lucas's death. The page began stained. The ink had blurred with some old tear as if the past was still crying for itself. I left him alone. Only for 10 minutes. I swear. He was playing. I just went to the gate to talk to the neighbor. When I came back, he wasn't breathing anymore. My son. My love. My God. Why wasn't it me? There were no more complete sentences from then on. Only broken words. Suffocated screams in lowercase letters. I screamed. Screamed so much. Tried to revive him. Called emergency. Time stopped. The police arrived. The veiled trial. The questions. Their gaze. I gaze in the mirror. Next, another excerpt written days later. People say it was an accident. But I can't believe it. I can't. I should have been there. I should have saved him. I was the mother. I closed the diary for a few seconds. My vision was blurry. In my mind I saw a sunny garden, a small inflatable pool and a boy laughing with the whole world ahead of him. And then, emptiness. My mother didn't erase Lucas from the story because she didn't love him. She erased him because she erased herself along with him. Because she couldn't bear to look at her own wound. Because writing about him or speaking or keeping the photo face up, all of that was reigniting unbearable pain. She raised me in silence because it was the only way she knew how to stay alive. Maybe her mistake was trying to protect me from the same trauma, when all I wanted was to know where I came from. But now I knew. And it hurt. A lot. I spent the entire night reading. The diary's last pages revealed a new kind of despair, the need to go on. Without Lucas. Without his father. Without support. Just a baby in her arms. Me and a wound that bled in silence. Helena is not Lucas. But she's part of him. When she smiles I see both. When she sleeps I hear his breath. Sometimes I hug her and I feel guilt. Guilt for her being here and him not. I closed my eyes tightly. I always felt there was a distance between me and my mother. Now I understood. She didn't reject me. She held me with such care that without realizing it she held me from afar. Not to repeat what happened before. Not to get attached and lose again. I try to love Helena with all I can. But sometimes, I feel like I'm betraying his memory. I couldn't read anymore. I closed the diary with a lump in my throat and went to the mirror. I looked at myself. For the first time I saw myself whole. Not just the daughter, but the reflection of an interrupted story. Of a mother who tried with all her might to be enough when everything around said she wasn't. Now it was my turn to decide what to do with all this. Keep it as she kept it, or reveal it. I chose to live with the truth face up. I spent the following days with my mother's diary by my side as if it were a new family member. But there was something still missing. Something she didn't have the courage to write or chose to leave implied. My father's name. She spoke of him as he, the father, the other side, but never mentioned directly who he was. It was as if writing the name could invoke some pain she didn't want to relive. I decided to search among the old papers. I went back to the house where I grew up and went to the most hidden part of the wardrobe, behind boxes with documents, old receipts, school notebooks. Everything seemed unimportant, until I found a black folder hidden under a false bottom of the drawer. Inside was a yellowed envelope with a handwritten letter. Sandra, I can't keep living between two lives. You deserve someone whole and I am not. I will take care of you from afar. I know you are expecting a boy. Let him be a boy of the world, not mine. M. Signed only with a letter. But the sender's stamp on the envelope revealed the full name, Marcelo Azevedo dos Santos. I searched for hours. Facebook, LinkedIn, public records. Until I found an engineering company in Niterói. Executive Director, Marcelo Azevedo dos Santos. I saw a photo of a gray-haired man with a serious look and a detail that paralyzed me. The same smile the boy in the face-up photo had. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept looking at the frozen image on the screen, wondering if he knew, if he ever cared, if he ever thought about me. The next morning I went after him. The company headquarters was downtown. Glass buildings, central air conditioning, people in a hurry and dark suits. All of it seemed so far from my story. But there, in that sterile environment, was part of my past. I identified myself at the reception. I said only, "My name is Helena Duarte. I need to speak with Mr. Marcelo Azevedo. It's personal." The receptionist hesitated. She called, murmured something. "He can see you for 10 minutes. I took the elevator with my heart pounding. When the office door opened, he was standing behind the desk. Static. As if he recognized someone he never knew. "Helena." His voice was low. Almost a whisper. "So you knew about me?" He sat down. Ran his hands over his face. "Your mother sent me a letter, when you were born. I read it. But I never had the courage to reply. Why? Because I was a coward. Because I was scared. Because my life was a lie and she deserved better. I hated hearing that. But part of me understood. And Lucas?" He widened his eyes. "She told you? I found everything. The photos. The diary. I know what happened." He took a deep breath. Lowered his eyes. "I went to the funeral, Helena. From afar. Without anyone knowing. I saw him. He was so small. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But I just stood still. Because it wasn't my right to be there. It wasn't your right, but it was your responsibility. I know." That confession came loaded with years of regret. "And then?" I asked. "Did you ever think about me?" He looked me in the eyes. And didn't look away. "I thought about you every day. But I didn't have the courage to come after you. And when I did, she had already moved. I never heard from her again. We stayed silent. 2 decades separated by a glass table. What do you want from me, Helena? I answered without hesitation. Nothing. Just the truth. And I stood up. But before I left, I placed something on the table. A copy of my brother's photo, now in a new frame. With the face turned upward. He cried. For the first time, someone cried for him. I went back home carrying a lightness I had never known. The truth, even when heavy, sets you free. I went to the living room. Took Lucas's photo. Pulled it from the bottom of the drawer. Straightened the frame. Ran my finger gently across the image. Then I climbed the ladder. And for the first time, I hung the photo on the wall. In the center of the room. On display. I stepped back a few paces. There he was. My brother. The one who lived briefly but marked me forever. My mother may have chosen to hide him, but I chose to remember. Not with pain, but with respect. That night I dreamed of him. A boy with big eyes, messy hair, and a serene smile. He said nothing. just looked at me, as if to say, Tao, yes. And when I woke up for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like something was missing. In the days that followed, the house felt different, as if it exhaled something that had been trapped within its walls for years. The silence that once felt heavy now sounded like relief. Not that the pain had vanished, but it finally had a name, a face, a story. I found myself sitting in the armchair where my mother used to spend her afternoons looking out the window. For the first time I sat there not as a spectator, but as the heir of everything she tried to hide. And I understood I needed to talk to her, even if she could no longer answer. I took a blank page and wrote as if it were for her. Mom, I'm not writing to blame you, nor to fully understand. I know some pains don't fit into explanations. But I want you to know that I saw you. Truly. For the first time I saw you. I saw your guilt, your attempt to protect, your human flaw, your courage to keep living even with a shattered soul. You were always a mystery to me. Now I know you were also a muffled scream. And still, you raised me. In your way. With silence but with presence. Thank you for not giving up on me. I folded the paper and placed it inside her diary, as if returning a part of myself that had also been lost. It was a new kind of grief. Not for what was lost but for what was never lived. And even so I felt lighter. Like someone who had cried enough. Like someone who, finally, had accepted what can never be changed. Thought I knew myself. I thought I was just a regular woman, daughter of a distant mother, no siblings, no story. And suddenly I was all that and more. I was the sister of someone I never met, daughter of a father who abandoned me, and granddaughter of an inherited pain. In the mirror I began looking at myself differently. Before I searched for flaws. Dark circles, expression lines, features that reminded me time passes and doesn't always leave gifts. Now I looked for traces. The eyes were mine but also of someone no longer here. The shape of the face was hers. My mother's. The smile, maybe just maybe, was my father's. And the emptiness? That was no longer mine. I began painting. Something I hadn't done since adolescence. Not because I wanted to become an artist but because I needed to release everything inside, and words weren't enough. I painted a woman with blindfolded eyes, hugging an invisible boy. Then I painted the same woman with open eyes, the boy beside her, and a framed photo on the wall behind them. Felt like brushstroke by brushstroke I was rebuilding myself. Not the old Helena, but a new one. More wounded but also more whole. A month later I returned to my mother's house to close what needed to be closed. Not to erase, but to set free. I brought flowers to her grave for the first time without resentment. I placed beside it a small photo of Lucas, the same one from the frame. And there for the first time they were together, even if only symbolically. I took a deep breath and said, I found him, Mom. And I found you too. Maybe too late. But I found you. On the way back I stopped at a thrift store. I bought an old wooden frame, dark and full of details. Inside it I placed a copy of Lucas's photo. I brought it home with me. Not as a reminder of what was missing, but as a symbol of something that, even absent, shaped me. I created a small altar. Not of religion, but of memories. Beside the frame I left a candle burning. And a note, written in my handwriting. Here lives the one who couldn't live. And here blossoms the one who almost didn't know how to live. Now we are all part of the same story. Face up. Visible. Whole. From that moment on I decided I would no longer leave truths face down. Nor photos. Nor memories. Nor feelings. My mother left me many absences. But she also left me the chance to break the cycle. And that I would not let go. When I finally decided to speak about Lucas, I thought the world would embrace my truth the way I embraced his. But that's not what happened. I started with those closest to me. I spoke to my aunt, my mother's sister, over coffee, thinking she would understand. Helena, you shouldn't dig that up. But why not? Because your mother chose to forget. And sometimes remembering only makes things worse. Worse. I almost laughed. As if hidden pain were less corrosive than exposed pain. As if turning your face away solved anything. But I need to remember, Aunt. He existed. He was my brother. She sighed. Stirred her coffee harder than necessary. Your mother almost lost her mind after he died. She kept saying it was her fault. She spent months without leaving the house. We thought she'd disappear for good. It was only when you were born that she began to breathe again. But even then, she was never the same. Then why did no one ever tell me? because it was the only way to protect you from what destroyed her. I fell silent. For the first time, I understood it wasn't just my mother who carried that secret. It was the whole family. Everyone worked together to bury part of the story, as if by burying it, they could also bury the pain. But pain doesn't stay buried. It digs inward. The conversation ended without resolution. She didn't forbid me to speak, but looked at me as if I were betraying someone's memory. As if the truth were a crime. As if giving the silence a name were an act of cruelty. That night I dreamed of Lucas again. But this time he wasn't alone. He was in my mother's arms and she was crying. Not out of pain, but relief. I woke up with the feeling that my mission still wasn't over. A few days later I received a message from an unknown number. Helena, my name is Clara. I was a friend of your mother. She told me about you and about Lucas. We need to talk. It's important. Clara. The name appeared in a few pages of the diary. A childhood friend, a colleague from work, one of the few people my mother seemed to have shared a part of her truth with. We met in a park. A woman in her 60s, white hair tied in a loose bun, thick-rimmed glasses, and a sweet yet firm expression. She greeted me with a long hug as if she'd known me for a long time. You have Sandra's eyes, she said, her voice trembling. And her silence too. But different. Your silence is the kind that comes from discovery. We sat down. And for a while she just looked around as if needing to anchor herself in the present before diving into the past. Your mother told me about Lucas during the 3rd month of pregnancy. She was confused, scared, and very alone. His father, well, you know. I nodded. I stayed with her throughout the pregnancy. I was at the hospital when he was born. And I was with her the day he died. My eyes widened. You were there? She nodded slowly. I was the one who answered the phone when she screamed for help. I ran to her house before the ambulance. I found her kneeling on the floor, holding Lucas's body as if she could bring him back with the warmth of her chest. That image never left my mind. She paused. Took a deep breath. From that day on your mother changed. Closed all the doors. She only let you see the part of her she could control. The rest, she buried inside. And why didn't you ever try to tell me? Because I promised. And because, deep down, I also thought it was for the best. But after she died I started to doubt. And when I found out you were searching for answers I knew it was time. She opened her bag and pulled out a small box. Sandra gave me this a few weeks before she passed. She asked me to give it to you. When you were ready. I opened the lid with trembling hands. Inside was a tiny maternity bracelet with the name Lucas Duarte and a sealed envelope with my name handwritten. Clara held my hand. You don't have to read it now. But know this. The truth, no matter how painful, always sets you free. And I knew at that moment that Clara was more than a witness. She was the guardian of a piece of our story no one else dared to carry. It took me 2 days to open the envelope. I was afraid of what I might find. Afraid of being hurt again. Afraid of discovering more than I could handle. But I also knew I couldn't leave that part of the story voiceless. I sat in the same armchair as always, sunlight filtering through the curtains. And then I opened it. For a long time that image was hidden. Not by accident, but by pain. Today it remains visible. Because what shapes us should never be hidden. Memory is not to be silenced. Existence is not to be buried. The silence that followed my words wasn't one of awkwardness. It was one of respect. A silence heavy with held-back tears, paused breaths, hearts being touched in places only truth can reach. When I finished, several people came up to me. Some simply hugged me. Others shared similar stories. Of unacknowledged children, of mothers who never said what needed to be said, of traumas passed down from generation to generation like a cursed inheritance. I wasn't the only one. And it was there that night that I discovered something new. My pain could be a bridge. The impact of the talk was greater than I had imagined. Someone posted a video on Instagram, and within days I was invited to repeat the talk at schools, cultural centers, even at a regional university. I began to travel. In each place I heard stories. Some like mine, others completely different. But all with one thing in common. Someone had been silenced. By fear, by shame, by tradition, by a misguided attempt to protect. I created a project I named Keepers of the Invisible. A sort of traveling memorial where people could leave letters, objects, or photos of loved ones who had never been given a voice in their own family histories. With each exhibition, new boxes were filled. And along with them, the hearts of those who visited. I began to document everything. Photos, accounts, recordings. I thought about writing a book. But before that, I needed to revisit one place. I went back to my mother's house. It had been locked up since the funeral. The smell was one of abandonment and mold. But all the objects were still there. The clothes in the closet, the books with annotations, the handwritten recipes. In her room, I found a box I hadn't seen before. Inside were dozens of children's drawings. Scribbles, little houses, flowers. Signed in shaky letters, Lucas. Some were just blank pages with ink smudges. Others had sentences written by her. He liked blue. He asked for a brother. God took him first. I cried. There were the remains of a life that never had a chance to bloom. I gathered everything carefully. Took it to the memorial. I created a section called What Didn't Fit in Childhood, dedicated to children who left too soon or whose stories were erased by the pain of adults. Lucas would no longer be just a name in a diary or a forgotten photo. Now he was remembered. And I felt more and more that I was doing what I was born to do. Not by accident, but by destiny. It was on a cloudy Tuesday that I got the call. Good afternoon. Is this Helena Duarte? Yes. This is from Santa Cecilia Hospital. We have a lady here named Rosalina Duarte. She says she's your grandmother. I froze. My grandmother? But my mother always said her parents had died before I was born. She asked to see you. Said she has something important to tell you. And that she may not have much time. I thanked them and hung up. My heart beat like an ancestral drum. I never imagined there was anyone else in the family still alive. And now, a woman erased from my past was resurfacing urgently. I went to the hospital the same day. A small place in a rural town, smelling of ether and loneliness. In room 307 I found a frail old woman, hair white like a cloud and eyes identical to mine. She looked at me as if she had been waiting for me for decades. Helena. Her voice was weak but clear. Yes, it's me. She smiled. A smile full of pain and relief. You have your grandfather's eyes. And my daughter's name. She lived very quietly, didn't she? She did, yes. And you're making noise with her silence. I sat next to her. Rosalina held my hand with more strength than she seemed to have. I don't have much time, dear. But I need to tell you what your mother never could. She closed her eyes for a few seconds, breathing with difficulty. When she opened them, tears were already falling. I was the one who told her to hide everything. I was the one who told her never to speak about Lucas. I said the world wouldn't understand. That you would grow up better not knowing. He cried, and so did I. I thought I was protecting you both. But I was only pushing the pain forward. And now it's reached you. Rosalina squeezed my hand even tighter. Forgive me. For erasing your story. For erasing part of who you are. I kissed her forehead. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to listen. She smiled. Then listen. Because what I'm about to tell you changes everything you think you know about Lucas's father. Rosalina fell silent for a moment, as if carefully choosing every word. Lucas's father was not just some man, she began, voice low, almost a whisper. He was the love of my life, but he was also a secret too heavy for that time. My eyes stayed fixed on her, alert as the past began to reveal itself in fragments. Back then he was married. Married to another woman in a very influential family in town. I was young, foolish, and too in love to see that clearly. Rosalina took a deep breath, holding my hand tightly. My daughter, your mother, grew up not knowing, but Lucas was the result of that forbidden love. His father couldn't acknowledge him. Fear of society, family pressure. All of it tore us apart even before Lucas was born. She looked up at the ceiling as if seeing that time again. I wanted to fight. I wanted him to take responsibility. But he chose silence. And I couldn't do anything but carry that secret. It was the worst prison I've ever been in. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I never imagined that my family's past hid such deep pain and betrayal. That's why your mother suffered so much. She grew up with the weight of a love that couldn't exist and the absence of a brother who was never accepted. Rosalina looked at me, eyes filled with tears. I wanted to tell you everything earlier, but I didn't have the courage. Maybe you need time to process all this. I nodded, feeling the impact of the revelation open up space for even more questions I didn't know I had. I want to know everything. I need to know. She smiled, a little relieved. Then, my child, this story isn't over yet. In the weeks that followed, Rosalina told me everything she remembered from that time. Details that had never surfaced before. Secret meetings, broken promises, veiled threats, and a constant fear that made every step feel like dancing on a razor's edge. "Your mother was just a child when it all happened," Rosalina said one rainy afternoon as we sat on the hospital veranda. "But even then she held on to hope, the spark of a complete family. And that, in a way, saved her. I kept wondering what might have been different if Lucas's father had had courage. If he had chosen to love rather than to hide." Rosalina spoke about the woman he was married to. A stern lady, obsessed with appearances and traditions, who used her influence to keep everyone in line. She found out about Lucas and, fearing scandal, did everything she could to erase him. "The photo you found was probably one of the few things that escaped her grasp. It was a silent war between families, between past and present, between what was and what could have been. I felt like part of that invisible conflict, an heir to a battle I never asked to fight, but one that had now become my mission." At the same time, I realized this story wasn't just about tragedy. It was about resistance too. Every silence broken, every memory unearthed was an act of courage against the attempt to erase what is human and true. And so, with my grandmother's help, I began piecing together what I needed to finally understand the photo that had always faced down. By the end of that month, I organized a new exhibition for the keepers of the Invisible Memorial. This time the focus was my own family's story, a mosaic of letters, photos, drawings, and testimonies. I called it Light Between the Shadows. A name that reflected everything I had learned, the light of truth that is born from the darkness of secrecy. At the opening, Rosalina was there. She held my hand while she shared part of her story with the visitors. It was the first time she spoke publicly about everything. I felt the healing was not just mine, it was collective. Every person who looked at that once hidden photo saw a piece of their own story in it. And deep down I knew it wasn't over. The truth can be heavy, yes, but it can also be freeing. And I was ready to carry it, to tell the world that the photo, that photo that had stayed face down for so long, was finally looking up. With pride, with love, with truth. That night fell like a heavy cloak. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, even surrounded by voices and lights at the exhibit. As I watched people touching the photographs and letters, a shadow crossed my field of vision. I turned quickly. No one was there. Only the echo of my own footsteps in the quiet room. That I felt the eyes of the city on me. Or worse, the unseen gazes of those who would have preferred I hadn't unearthed any of this. The fear crept under my skin, cold and relentless. Suddenly, a whisper in my ear. "Be careful what you're looking for, Helena. Some truths kill." I turned abruptly. No one. My heart raced. My breath quickened. The photo that had always been face down seemed to pulse on the wall, as if it were alive. Who was threatening me? And why? This wasn't just a family story. It was something bigger, more dangerous. That night, alone at home, I received an anonymous message on my phone. "Stop before it's too late." The fear I had been trying to hide erupted into panic. I knew I couldn't turn back now. I had to go all the way. The next day, I went to the registry office to try to find some lead about Lucas's father. I needed to know more, to find out if he was still alive. But at every door I knocked, I felt invisible resistance, a curtain of silence shielding dark secrets. At the registry, an employee brushed me off when I asked about paternity records. "We have nothing here, miss. You might want to look elsewhere." On the street, a man in a dark suit followed me for several blocks. When I noticed, I quickened my pace, my heart thudding with fear. The city I once knew now felt like a maze of invisible threats. That night, I met with Clara to talk about what had happened. "You're in danger, Helena. This story isn't just yours. There are powerful people involved," she warned. "I know. But if I give up now, I'll carry that guilt forever." Clara agreed to help me investigate, even knowing it could put us at risk. I felt the weight of the mission more than ever. The truth had a cost, and I was willing to pay it. A few days later, Rosalina received an unexpected visitor at the hospital. A man with a cold face and hard eyes. "You've said too much, Mrs. Duarte," he said in a low, threatening tone. She tried to hide her fear, but the tension in the air was palpable. I didn't know who that man was, but I knew he brought no good news. Rosalina called me, her voice trembling. "They know everything. They're watching our every move. Be careful, Helena." That night, I sat in front of Lucas's photo, now facing up, lit by the soft glow of the lamp. Shadows danced on the walls as if ghosts from the past were there watching. I had to keep going. But fear gripped me tightly. My family's fate, the truth about Lucas, the shadow hanging over us. It was all consuming me. But I made myself a promise. I would not let this story die in darkness. Not anymore. The silence of the early morning is treacherous. While everyone sleeps, my thoughts scream louder than ever. The house feels smaller, suffocating. Lucas's photo, now face up on my desk, glows under the lamp's light, like it holds a hidden, beating heart. But I am not alone. I feel a presence, a shadow that moves, that doesn't belong to the night, that listens, that watches. With every sound, fear tightens in my chest, and one question echoes endlessly in my mind. Who wants to silence me? I try to rationalize, but the feeling doesn't go away. My phone vibrates. A new message. You're digging where you shouldn't. Stop before it's too late. My blood boils. I can't back down. But am I ready for what's coming? That night, a dry knock on the door makes my heart jump. I open it cautiously and see only a black envelope thrown on the mat. No sender, no words. Just a photo of my father, young, staring straight at the camera with eyes that seem to carry enormous secrets. My world collapses. Who's playing this game? What do they want me to do? I decided to meet Clara at the cafe we used to frequent. I need to share the weight, to understand our next steps. She looks at me with concern, but her eyes shine with determination. This story is bigger than we thought. Your father wasn't just secretly married, she says in a low voice. He was involved in something dark. Something that might explain why Lucas was hidden. My heart races. Doubt mixes with anger and curiosity. Clara shows me a folder full of old clippings, documents she found in public archives, and even newspaper reports. Most talk about a covered-up scandal, corruption, threats, even mysterious disappearances. If we want the truth, we'll have to enter this labyrinth, she says. I know there's no turning back. Every answer will lead us deeper into a web of lies, betrayal, and danger. But the photo I hold in my hand, the one that stayed face down for so long, deserves to be revealed. I return home exhausted but determined. That night, as I look at my father's photo, I don't just see a man from the past, but a symbol of the battle my family has fought. My fingers trace the image with a mixture of tenderness and fear. The photo was never just a memory, it was a puzzle, a locked door that needed to be opened. As I get ready to sleep, a strange sound breaks the silence. A click, like someone fiddling with the back door lock. My instincts scream for me to run, but something keeps me there. I rise, heart pounding, and slowly move toward the door. No one. Just a cold breeze slipping through the crack. But I know. They're close. The game has turned, and now I'm part of it. Truth has a price, and I'm about to pay it. The following days were a mix of adrenaline and exhaustion. Every step felt like I was sinking deeper into a swamp where trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Clara found a valuable lead. A name appearing in old documents, tied to both my father and the woman he tried to forget. He's the missing link, Clara explained. The man who can reveal everything. But finding this man wouldn't be easy. He seemed to have vanished, either out of fear or by force. Meanwhile, my grandmother Rosalina began to show signs of weakness. Age and the weight of secrets were taking their toll. You must know the truth, Helena, she said one night, her voice trembling. But be careful. Not everyone wants it to come out. The tension in the air was almost tangible, like a taut rope ready to snap. Then an unexpected phone call, a hoarse, unidentified voice. Want the truth? Meet me tomorrow at the old warehouse by the port. Bring the photo. My heart raced. It was the invitation I feared and longed for at the same time. I arrived at the warehouse tense, my eyes scanning every dark corner. The sense of danger was overwhelming, but curiosity and determination pushed me forward. In the dim light, a figure stepped out. A middle-aged man, his gaze steady but marked by years of silence. You're Helena, he said bluntly. I nodded, clutching my father's photo tightly. What do you know about him? I asked, trying to control the tremble in my voice. He took a deep breath. Your father was a man trapped between two worlds, he explained. He tried to protect his family, but got caught in a web of betrayal and lies involving powerful people. The woman he left behind wasn't just a betrayed wife. She was a key player in a game of power and control. I felt the weight of his words, the truth weaving a web that had ensnared not only my father but my entire history. Why did they hide Lucas? I asked. Because he was a threat to the balance of that web, the man replied. Acknowledging him would mean admitting failures, exposing secrets that could destroy reputations and lives. The warehouse seemed to close in around me, but I knew I had to press on. I went home with a head full of information and a soul heavy with doubt. I knew I now had the power to change everything, but at what cost? Claire was waiting, anxious for answers. So, what did you find out? She asked. I told her everything, every detail, every shadow now turning to light. What will you do now? She asked. I looked at my father's photo, at the face that carried secrets and hope. I'm going to tell our story, I said firmly. So no one else has to live with secrets kept face down. The tension hadn't gone away, but the decision was made. Truth, however painful, is the only path to freedom. And I was ready to face whatever comes. After that tense and revealing meeting at the warehouse, the world I thought I knew completely collapsed. The photo of my father, once forgotten in a dusty box, now had a new meaning. It was the symbol of a truth I was willing to face no matter the cost. With each step, I felt the invisible weight of eyes watching me, of voices whispering behind my back, like a dark cloak trying to choke me. The feeling of being surrounded by powerful forces that didn't want the truth exposed became more real than ever. And when I least expected it, my phone buzzed with a message that chilled my spine. Not everyone is on your side, Helena. Trust few. Fear tried to take hold, but something inside me burned with a desperate kind of courage. Clara, always steadfast at my side, and my grandmother Rosalina, even in her age, showed a strength I needed to carry on. The truth would no longer be a buried secret. I was ready to carry the weight of this choice, even if it threatened to destroy everything around me. My search for the truth became an obsession that consumed my days and nights. Every document, every photo, every newspaper clipping I found seemed to piece together a dark and intricate puzzle, yet crucial pieces were still missing. Then came the worst revelation, hitting me like a punch to the stomach. Someone very close to me, someone I blindly trusted, was betraying me. This person was leaking details of my investigation to those desperate to keep the secrets buried. The pain of that betrayal was worse than any external threat. It was a knife to the heart, confirmation that the shadows weren't just out there. They had also infiltrated my circle of trust. I felt alone, vulnerable, but more alert than ever. I now had to be cautious, strategic, every step measured to avoid the invisible traps surrounding me. The search for truth was no longer just an external journey. It was an internal battle against fear, doubt, and betrayal that threatened to destroy me from within. It was one of those nights when the silence felt heavier than usual. I was sitting at my desk, surrounded by piles of old documents, yellowed photographs, and crumpled letters. I tried to make sense of the chaos, piecing together fragments of a story darker and bigger than I had imagined. Suddenly, the phone rang, slicing through the quiet like an unexpected scream. I answered, holding my breath, and on the other end was a woman's voice, calm, but laced with cold, threatening authority that froze my blood. Helena, you're playing with fire. Stop before you really get hurt. The voice sounded familiar, as if I had heard it in dreams or distant memories, but I couldn't place it. Before I could say anything, the line went dead, leaving me immersed in a heavy, threatening silence. The message was clear. My search for the truth would come at too high a cost. Maybe even my life. Fear clutched my chest like an invisible hand, but along with it, a fierce determination was born. I couldn't back down. I was bound to this path no matter the price. The omen was dark, but my will to face the darkness was even stronger. Since that moment that changed everything, a persistent, uncomfortable feeling took root in me, the certainty that I was being watched. It wasn't just irrational fear, but a clear, almost physical perception of invisible eyes following my every move, lurking in the shadows of my daily life. The world felt like a dark maze where every corner hid a silent threat. I tried to stay calm, to pretend everything was normal for those around me, but deep down, anxiety was eating away at my peace. The decision to reveal the truth about my father, to expose the secrets my family had buried, wasn't just a choice. It was a pact with myself and with justice. But that pact felt more and more like a death trap. Those desperate to keep the silence had become like dark ghosts, infiltrating my life, trying to silence me before I could speak a word. Clara, my best friend, was a pillar of strength in this storm. Her constant presence helped me resist to not give in to fear. But even she was beginning to carry an invisible burden. Her growing concern made her eyes shine with anguish, as if she were holding a secret she couldn't share with me. On a particularly cold and rainy night, while we were buried in old files, the sharp crack of a branch breaking outside made my heart leap. Fear gripped my chest with a firm hand. It wasn't paranoia. I knew something was wrong. The air in the room felt suffocating, and the wall clock marked each passing second with agonizing slowness. I stood up slowly, trying to hear beyond the relentless rain. Outside, in the dimly lit shadows cast by the streetlights, something moved, a stealthy, determined presence. That night marked the beginning of a silent hunt, and I was the prey. I had nowhere to run. The next night brought an unexpected and terrifying turn. After an entire day of tension, when I finally arrived at my apartment, something in the air made me shiver. The door was slightly ajar, something unthinkable for someone as cautious as me. A cold chill ran down my spine. I entered cautiously, holding my breath, every muscle on high alert. Inside, everything was out of place. Drawers had been opened and ransacked, papers scattered on the floor. My heart raced as if it might explode. My sanctuary had been violated. Worse still, I noticed that important documents, evidence I had carefully preserved, were gone. It was a brutal, unmistakable message. "We're closer than you think." The betrayal I faced wasn't just external. The threats, the suspicious glances, the whispered secrets had a face, and it might be closer than I could bear. My thoughts spiraled, searching for someone I could trust. The police? I knew it was risky. The power and control these people had extended beyond what I imagined. Friends? Distrust had already corroded many relationships, leaving a cold, lonely void. I decided I couldn't wait any longer. It was time to act, to confront the enemy head-on. I needed to discover who was hiding behind the mask of normalcy, to understand their motives and expose their dark intentions. The battle wouldn't be easy, and I knew every step forward could be my last. But the truth demanded justice, and I was ready to pay the price. In the stillness of that night, I sat in front of the photo that had triggered it all. My father's eyes seemed to pierce into my soul, pleading for justice and answers he could no longer give. That image held buried secrets, memories suffocated by fear and silence. I stood at a crossroads that would change my life forever. I could take the easier path, retreat, let the secrets remain hidden, live under the shadow of fear that now threatened to consume me. Or I could break the silence, expose everything, and face the consequences, no matter how terrible they might be. The decision wasn't easy. Every thought brought doubt and terror. But the truth had become an inextinguishable flame within me, an urgent need that pulsed with growing force. With trembling hands, I wrote an anonymous email to a renowned investigative journalist, attaching all the documents, photos, and accounts I had gathered. It was a risky move, a leap into the unknown, but the sense of release was immediate. For the first time in a long time, I felt a heavy burden lift from my shoulders, the burden of lies and secrets. I knew this action was just the beginning. The fight against those trying to silence the truth would continue, and the road ahead would be hard, full of dangers and uncertainty. But for the first time, I felt I had taken control of my own story. And that was enough. The days following the email to the journalist were the longest and most agonizing of my life. Every minute dragged as if time had frozen in an endless loop of waiting and anxiety. The phone rang constantly. Many calls were silent or came from unknown numbers that made my heart freeze with each ring. I kept looking out the window, trying to spot suspicious figures in the street, unable to sleep properly. Fear became a constant companion, a shadow that followed me into every corner of my home, even when I left. The feeling of being hunted by something invisible was suffocating. But deep down, I knew this was simply the price of the truth I had chosen to unveil. The people who had hidden secrets for years were now desperate to silence my voice. Clara, my most loyal friend, never left my side, despite the visible exhaustion in her eyes. She tried to keep me grounded, reminding me that we were fighting for something bigger than ourselves. I saw the fear in her too, not just for what might happen to us, but for the magnitude of what we were about to unleash. It felt like we were in the eye of a storm about to explode, and all I could do was hold on and wait. The storm arrived. In the dead of night, my apartment was invaded by shadows and threatening whispers. This was the reaction of those who could no longer hide their sins, who feared the light of truth and would do anything to extinguish the flame I had lit. When the story was finally published, it was as if the world paused for a moment. The impact of those words, those revealed secrets, rippled far beyond what I could have imagined. It was as if an ancient structure of silence and lies began to crumble, exposing the deep wounds no one wanted to confront. I received messages from strangers sharing their own stories of pain and silence. These voices joined mine, creating a wave of courage and solidarity that filled me with hope. For the first time, I felt I was no longer alone in the fight, that the weight of the truth was finally being shared. But the light that broke through also cast new shadows in my life. The exposure of my family's story sparked unexpected reactions. Accusations, disputes, veiled threats, and even the distancing of loved ones. Still, none of that could extinguish the flame of justice burning within me. Clara became more than a friend, she became a sister in arms. Together we faced every challenge, every malicious word, every obstacle thrown in our path. The light of truth, though painful, was the only way forward. It was the beacon not only for me but for all who sought justice and redemption. Finally, in the silence of my home, I sat before that old photo, the one that had remained face down for so long, hiding secrets and sorrow. Now it was upright before me, revealing not just my father's face but the weight of our history. A history marked by struggle, loss, and above all, courage. I felt a deep peace I hadn't known in years. The truth, though hard and scarred, had set me free. Not a painless freedom but a real one, born from the courage to face the past and the shadows it carried. My journey changed me. Fear gave way to strength. Doubt became conviction. The photo became a symbol of rebirth, not just for me but for anyone who carries a secret too heavy to bear alone. I was no longer the girl afraid to look back. I was the woman who found in the truth her light, her purpose, and her hope. And so I rose from the ashes, ready to write the next chapters of my life, with the photo finally turned upright, like a beacon lighting the way.